kind of taken on the ticket by Roosevelt just to throw a fig leaf to some people that he wanted to support him. Roosevelt never did confide in Harry Truman, and he was on the outside looking in. And when Roosevelt died, I was a midshipman, I cried, because I had the prospect of Harry Truman being my commanding officer, my commander in chief. Later, when I was in submarines, I began to appreciate what Harry Truman stood for and what he did. I think he was honest to a T. I doubt if he ever used a 3-cent stamp that he didn't pay for himself. And he was under tremendous pressure from the same people that tried to prevent President Johnson putting in place the Civil Rights Act. He was under the pressure of my senator, Dick Russell, and Strom Thurmond, and many others. I won't name them. And Truman, already unpopular, he went out of office the most unpopular president in history, ordained as commander-in-chief that all racial discrimination in the military forces was over that day. And he was condemned severely by all his generals and admirals, and overwhelmingly in the Congress, and by many other people in America, but he did it. And so my life on the submarine was changed by that decision. And it affected my whole future. And then after Truman left office, there wasn't much progress made on civil rights. It was 8 years later before Rosa Parks sat in the front of a school bus while Martin Luther King became active. Truman was 8 years ahead of them. And it was later before President Johnson finally was the ultimate hero in successfully ending legal civil discrimination. And so Truman was my favorite because of that. And I would say that the most successful president in my memory was Lyndon Johnson, who had his Great Society program. The Civil Rights Act, only one part of it. And with Medicaid and Medicare and the massive program for poverty, war against poverty. And I was governor when he put into effect the Elementary School Act. And I went up and testified in favor of that act as a governor. And Head Start. All of those things transformed the life of America. And he was courageous enough to control budget deficits even when he was faced with terrible threats to the budget. During the Vietnam War, which is very costly, he imposed taxes and other things to make it possible. So he's been the most successful president by far. And one of the main reasons, except for his family who are present, that I'm here.
This question comes from one of our students, Mr. President. How can young people be a positive force in the political process today?
Well, I must say some things that some of you may not like. I don't mean to say this is the first thing I've said that you didn't like. I would like for the young people of the coming generations to strive for transcendence in political affairs, for superlative accomplishments, not just in your own profession, but in the political life of America. I would like for our country to become a real superpower. And I realize that now our military is larger than the budgets of the next 20 nations in the world, almost equal to all the other defense budgets on earth. And I know that we are still the most powerful economic system on earth with the dollar prevailing everywhere. And culturally, we're still the number one with Facebook and Twitter and that sort of thing, and Google, and our music and so forth. So we're still the most powerful and influential country on earth. But superpower, in my opinion, for the young people only, ought to be a characteristic of a nation that would emulate the highest ideals of a human being. I happen to be a Christian, and I talk quite often of the standards of Jesus Christ. We know him as the Prince of Peace. We know that he espoused justice, and he reached out to people who were in need. He was forgiving, and so forth. I don't see why the young people of this nation can't set as your goal that our country would be a superpower in every respect. What would this mean? Well, one thing is, whenever people in a foreign country were faced with a civil war, I would like for the first thought that came to our mind, why don't we go to the United States? Because the United States is a world champion of peace. The United States resorts to conflict in extremely rare occasions and tries to resolve disputes peacefully. I would like for people who want democracy and freedom to say the United States has the best democratic electoral system on earth. It's not shaped by how wealthy a candidate is or how much special interest money can be garnered into a very expensive campaign, but it would be open to anybody qualified to serve as president who could present their platform planks on an equal basis. I would like for the world to say the United States is a champion of environment, in the forefront of the move to prevent global warming, for instance. I would like to see the United States be the most generous nation on earth, sharing our wealth and resources with other people who are in need, like Norway or Sweden or Denmark or the Netherlands. So I'm not criticizing my country, which I love. And as I said to begin with, it's still the greatest nation in the world. But there are aspects of basic morality based on the principles of Christianity and other religions as well, where the United States is not the leader. We're not the leader in preserving peace. The Carter Center has programs in 73 countries. I would say in most of those countries, if you say which is the country on earth most likely to go to war, most of them would say the United States. And we are not in the forefront of environmental issues, but Lyndon Johnson was. And the elections we had in the year 2000, elections we had in the year 2004, showed increasingly that the outcome of the election depends on money. It would be impossible now for anybody to be the candidate of the Democratic or Republican Party that couldn't raise, I would say, $100 million in advance, or $200 million. So we have not stigma on ourselves, but the point is we have opportunities to improve in the future. And it requires some thoughts that are independent and innovative, and I would say idealistic. And it's going to be the next generation that would have to bring this about.
What will history say about Jimmy Carter?
I think a lot of people say he only served one term. He got defeated the first time. That's not my preference. I would like for people to remember that I kept the peace and that I promoted human rights. Almost without hesitation and without too much equivocation. We had some leaders on earth that were not true Democrats, but what I explained in South America is one example. I think our human rights policy, followed up by others, helped to bring freedom. So I would say peace and human rights. That would be my preference.
Before we came on stage, Tom Johnson said to my friend Tom Johnson said, Jimmy Carter is one of my heroes. And I can say without equivocation that you are truly an American hero, Mr. President. This has been our great honor having you here tonight. We very much appreciate you being with us. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you, sir.
It's been a pleasure. Had good questions. Thank you all.